When you open SketchUp for the first time, it will ask you what file type would you like to use. It'll offer you some different options. You can use the simple template, which is inches, or you can use the architectural template, which is grayed out background. Sometimes it can be helpful when you're first starting to use the background that has the sky on it. For this, maybe we'll just go ahead and use the simple template, but when we do our actual models, we'll do it in the architectural template. You're going to want to work in feet and inches, so it's important that you use the inches template. We're going to go ahead and click that. Here you will see the tool layout. If you don't see this large bar here on the left, go to View, click on Tool Palettes, and just make sure that the large tool set is checked off. For this exercise, we're going to leave the person in there. I'm going to orbit over to an area where I can get a better view. I'm going to use the hand tool to pan over and just set up my view so that I can start to draw out my house. Remember that you're going to need to know what the perimeter views are, and you probably want to work at an angle where you're looking down onto the surface and where you can see the green and red axes. Remember that the green and red axes are coplanar and the blue axis goes up in space. So just keep that in mind while you're working. We already went over the outside lengths of the wall of my house. So I'm going to just draw that in. And I'm going to use the pencil tool to do this. I know that my first wall length is 71 feet. So I'm going to click, probably close to this person here. I'm going to click, start to drag my pencil and make sure that it's pulling toward the red axes so that I know it's parallel to the red axes. And I'm just going to let go of everything and type in 71 feet, and I'm going to use the apostrophe for the foot notation, and I'm going to click enter. This gives me a line that is 71 feet within the modeling area. Next, my next line is 28 feet going on the opposite way. I'm going to do this again, clicking on the green axis so that I know that my lines are 90 degrees from each other. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put in 28 feet and hit enter. Now, there are a few ways that I could draw my house. My house doesn't have a lot of corners, so I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the overall rectangle, and then I'm going to use the guidelines to figure out where I need to draw the little bump out. Because this is a rectangle, when I draw my next line, I'm going to pull that along the parallel axis to the red. And if I mouse over the end point of my first line and I pull away, you can see that there is a dotted, it's a little difficult to see, but there's a little dotted green line there, and that's telling me that it's parallel to the green axis. And I'm just going to pull my pencil back until the line I have snaps into the red. Then I'm going to go ahead and click. And now when I come across along the green axis, it will meet right at the top of the beginning of where I started my drawing. When you complete the shape, SketchUp will fill in the area with a surface. All things in SketchUp consist of surfaces and lines. And you'll see that if I click once, I get the surface. And if I click twice, I get the surface and the exterior lines. I can also select the lines individually if I need to. That will become important later. So here is the overall rectangle, but this is not actually the footprint of my house. There is a little bump out here that comes over 12 feet. So I'm going to go ahead and use a guideline. And to do that, we use the tape measure tool, which is right here. And you click on the edge. You want to click where you see a red square. If you mouse over a little further, you'll see a cyan dot that lets you know you're at the middle of this line, and you don't necessarily want to pull from there because it's going to give you most likely a straight line. So when you're pulling guidelines, you really want to be pulling on the opposite edge that you want to measure and make sure that you see that red square. So I'm going to click that and I'm going to pull over on the red axis and I'm going to type in 12 feet, doing 12 and then apostrophe for feet and click enter. So this tells me how far over I have to draw to make this bump out. Now I need the direction going the other way. So I'm going to pull a guideline again, and I'm going to click and drag down, this time on the green axis. And for this measurement, I'm going to be typing 14 feet, 6 inches. So in order to do that, I'm going to type in 1-4, and then I'm going to type in apostrophe, and then I'm going to make a space, and I'm going to type in 6 and a quotation mark for inches, and I'm going to click enter. You can always check your measurements by using the dimension tool. With this tool, you click on a corner and then click on the next corner to measure it, and if I pull that away, I can clearly see that this is 14 feet 6 inches. To get out of any tool in SketchUp, you click the escape key. This guideline tells me where I should draw my line very precisely. So I'm going to click the pencil tool again, and this time I'm going to come into the edge there and go over and create my bump out. Now I don't need this piece here, so I'm going to use my eraser tool and I'm just going to click an edge away, and you can see that when you delete a line, it takes away or breaks the surface. So this is very helpful. I can then go ahead and delete the guidelines because I don't need them anymore. Here's the footprint of my house. My second floor is a carbon copy of my first floor, so it does make it easier for me to draw my house. But first I need to make the volume. This is my footprint and the outline of it. So now I'm going to use the push-pull tool, which is here. It's the little box with the arrow on it. I'm going to mouse over the surface of this, and I'm going to click and drag this up the height of my walls plus the height of the joist for the second floor. And I may also want to include, for good measure, a foot for my foundation. So that means that I'm going to be pulling this up a total of 10 feet. So I have a foot for my foundation, I have 8 feet for the interior walls, and I have 1 foot for the floor joists that will support the second floor. So it's going to be 10 feet, so that's apostrophe. So typing in 10 and clicking enter. So if I go to measure this height now with my dimension tool, I can see exactly how big this is. Now before I forget, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use these guidelines again, and I am going to pull up some guidelines 1 foot so that I don't forget where my foundation is. When you use guidelines, you can also measure to guidelines. So I'm going to pull that again, but this time I'm just going to go over and I'm going to mouse over, use inferencing to meet the other one, and you can see in my measurement box it says 1 inches, and I'm going to do this all the way around my perimeter here, and I can also type in 1 foot as well. And I just find this helpful because that way I don't forget about how high that foundation is, and when I go to put in maybe some doors, I know where that is. You can also do the same thing for the joists if you want, but it's not totally necessary. It might be necessary later if you want to put in some squares for windows and things like that. The next part we're going to do is we are going to group this layer because we're going to make an identical one next to it. Or if your second floor is different from your first floor, you're going to just redraw the second floor perimeter next to this first floor. But before you do anything else, you want to group them. So the way to do that is to select all the surfaces and all the lines. To do that, you need to triple click on the object. If I click once, I get one surface. If I click twice, I get the outer lines. But if I click 3 times, I get the whole thing, including the underneath. So that's very important. Now I'm going to mouse over it and I'm going to right click, and here I'm going to say make group. And you'll see that there's a line that automatically gets placed around here. That's just letting you know, or a darker blue line, that's letting you know it's a group. You can always go in and edit the group if you double click on the inside and you get this dotted bounding box, and you can move and change anything within the group, and then when you're done you just click outside of the dotted lines to close it. It's not obvious until you actually start to click on it. This is my second floor is a duplicate of my first floor, as I mentioned before. So it's very easy for me to pull a copy. For those of you that have a different floor, you're just going to draw that in another place in the working area and also pull it up and group it. But here I can make a copy of this. So I'm just going to click it here, or I'm going to click it here, and I'm going to use the move tool, which is this 4-arrow cross right here. And when you move anything in SketchUp, be very careful to grab a corner and move away. If you grab the surface, you're just grabbing somewhere in space and it becomes very hard to place anything. The best rule of thumb is to grab the corner so you can move it anywhere you want. But I want a copy of this, so I'm going to do a little extra step. I'm going to grab the corner and I'm going to hold the Option key on the keyboard, and you see the little plus sign, and then I'm just going to pull away, and you'll see that it will also lock on the green axis, and that lets me know that it is on parallel with the first one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'm just going to click to anchor it, and I can pull away. And you can see that it actually also automatically grouped it. But if it didn't do that, I would just triple click, right click, and make group and put it together. This particular size is 10 feet. But really, my second floor is only going to be 8, and this is 10. So I have to pull it down because this is a direct copy. I have to modify this so that the height of the second floor is correct. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to double click on the inside, and I'm going to go into edit mode. And I'm going to take my push-pull tool, and I'm just going to push down and then type in 2 feet. So that way SketchUp knows the direction that I want it to go, and I'm going to reduce it by 2 feet by just typing in 2 feet. We don't actually have to do anything with negatives or anything like that. Then I'm going to click back to the selection tool and click outside the box to close it. And I'm just going to double check this with my measurements tool here. And I'm going to click the corner and go to the other corner, and there it is, 8 feet. That's the standard height of a second floor, or of any floor. Now I want to move this and I want to put it on top. So again, if you remember, I'm going to take the move tool. Remember that you always want to move a corner to a corner. So I'm going to grab that corner and I'm going to line it up with this corner. Sometimes it may look funny or it may not go in the right place. Always just zoom in and make sure you know where that's going and go ahead and drop it. Now the two of these are separated. So now I have a sense of what my 2 floors might look like when they're on top of each other. So I'm going to stop this video here, and in the next video, I'm going to talk about roofs.